Israeli faction is concerned there.
Correct.
And the question that maybe Gado is actually trying to make us really ponder about is, what is the reaction of the international community as you can look at that particular editorial cartoon? This is what is in the Standard this morning. And we can cross over now to also the Star. And we have there, this is all about the debate that you've been following as far as the Chief Administrative Secretary is concerned. And we can see nyama imetolewa mdomoni, nyama ya kuku there. And you can see there the judiciary is flying away with the CS's jobs as far as that is concerned. And they're contesting this in court. But no, when we began the program, you were talking about how bloated the government is. And the president has been speaking on paring down on the wage bill. And this is the final result as far as the determination of the courts is concerned. Ahmed Hashi, where are we headed?
I think
as far as the bloated government, the wage bill is concerned.
Well, I said 2 days after the inauguration of the president that he was going to be a one-term president, that he was going to not bring the people of Kenya together, and that he was going to ruin the economy. My predictions, as you know, Debal, my predictions are made of potent stuff. When I say something on KTN, these things tend to happen. So, Debal, I want to put it to you, or I want to testify to you, Debal, today, that it's gone beyond putting it to you, that Mr. Ruto's coalition of the willing has now become a willing of the coalition, if you get the drift. The willing of the coalition means that there's going to be a huge fight inside this grand sort of coalition that they have. Because, you know, the people who are being appointed CAS, ni watu ya mtaani, the people who mobilize the youth and things like this Malala-type people. You can tell the cabinet is also being turned into a Malala-type cabinet. You know that Mr. Malala, who is the Secretary General of the party, who has no business in cabinet, is sitting there as a rungu for Mr. Ruto, just if any of these cabinet secretaries dares raise their head. And I think that the government of yes men, by yes men, and for yes men, the ball will end before the election writ is called in August. And Kenyans already, and particularly in the constituencies that voted for Mr. Ruto, even if you wear a yellow T-shirt now in central Kenya, you can be dragged off for a matatu. And before, it was the best color that you saw in central Kenya. My cousins over there in Nandi County are not happy as well because, Debal, you know that he promised everything. Now the fuel, Debal, you remember? 100 days, the fuel was going to come down. I am not criticizing the government. I'm just criticizing what they said, what they promised. It's not me who said those things. It's the presidential campaign that said those things. So, Debal, there's an across-the-board failure. But there's also there's a much more serious issue, Debal. And that serious issue is that I can feel the ocean of flux in our society. Debal, the entire country is suffering. People are having one meal a day. Getting into a matatu or going to one from home to work is a big problem. Rent, Debal, is difficult to pay. My sense of the people, Debal, is very nuanced. And I believe, Debal, that on Friday, when the opposition starts its rebellion, I think that they're going to be joined by Kenyans, not because they're supporting Azimio or they're supporting the Raila Odinga, but they're just opposed to William Ruto. And I think, Debal, that this taxation tax this country to the bone. I hear that they want to now get on the M-Pesa transactions, so that if I send money to you or to it gets taxed. Debal, you know, every revolution in the world has started with the taxes, Debal. And here in Sudan, if you remember, one morning, the women went to the shop and they found the bread had been 3 times the price, and they just started demonstrating, and the government fell. Debal, I think the political elite in this country think Kenyans are a joke, that they're just going to take it, that everything can be done. Utadu. wataona Friday.
But you sound a bit very polarized, Ahmed Hashi. You're just speaking out your heart as it is. Let me just hear from regarding this particular editorial cartoon and the CSs.
Yes, and
although you mentioned it.
Dubal, I teach 3 classes, graduate classes in Uganda, which is attended by 55 students from 11 countries in Africa. I have senior general of military. The general in charge of Uganda presidential is part of my students. They are senior police, senior intelligent people. The most important thing is Kenya had risen to epics in terms of leadership of East Africa. It was a consistent focus. We had our fault. We have our issue. We were not perfect, and we are not perfect now. But we command the largest economy, the most professional military and security, the highest education standard that we have created, a fairly good health system, though it's not reached to the standard where it has reached. Kenyans are watching for that. And so you see what has sustained America today is you can have Reagan, who is very extreme conservative, and you can have Trump, who is extreme in his self, and you can have Barack Obama. But the system itself, the American government says, is sustained. You bring these extreme people, extreme dialogue together to really focus on the best interest of America. And so what I'm saying here, and what my friend has here expressed, is there is a lot of greenhorn in the government. You know, a CS come in a restaurant and you don't know what CS for. You know, and all these people are in. Secondly, they don't seem to be disciplined. There's a lot of pronouncement, or in terms of policy and everything, going back literally to Moi era. So the president is smart enough. You know, he's the president, he ran, he succeeded. What he needs to do is to have disciplined government. He needs to be the spokesperson of the country, or the person designated as the speaker. We don't need to hear 5 people saying 5 different things, and then you now trying to wonder what is happening. Then the next day there is tax, and then people are suffering. Kenyan people, if you travel to Mombasa or travel to Western or travel to where, people are suffering, ordinary people, sending their children to school, health care is completely out of control, food, just ordinary food. So someone ought to listen. Someone ought to listen that Kenyans are fed up with the campaign slogans, 2027, all that. Kenya don't want to hear that. Kenya want to hear really active implementation of the program that they have proposed, like KPI for every CS. Mm-hmm. What have you done? What are your progress? What are the challenges? How can Kenya rally together in order to help them? And so I see really a demarcation, a separation. So the rest of Africa are asking what is happening to Kenya. And this really comes to the leadership of East Africa, because they're all asking, where does Kenya stand on particular issue? And where is Kenya going? And if you look at the Kenya currency, the BAU, and South Africa rand, were the 2 currencies that were used for business in Africa. We're running down. Kenya money is running down right now. So what is happening? And so we have 4 years to go. We cannot continue with this 4 years. I support the president to succeed, but the people surrounding the president need to rally together and need to listen to the Kenyan people.
Absolutely. Indeed. That is what we have there on the editorial cartoon, and the comments here from Noah Midamba. I think there's a face here which is misplaced if you look at the CSS. Because this looks like the face of Malala. But it's not part of the CSs.
You know,
Maybe it was not really missed it here.
You know,
I don't know.
you know the concept of Malala is the spiritual thinking of our president. Our president, remember, was in YK 92. This is his political culture. Debal, Malala, the many more in the cabinet and permanent secretaries. These are people in the temple of William Ruto. And the chief there who whips them up is the Minister for Roads, Mr. Murkomen, who went to Londiani. And I want to send my deepest condolences to the people who lost their lives there. Debal, it just shows you how many times that we keep talking. Every time this happens, I urge the government to have a national disaster center. I urge them to have a national disaster center and a czar for disasters in this country. I urge them to create those in the counties to make sure that there were constabularies. This is an old English system that we used to have, a constabulary, in which, you know, these people were specifically on the highways dealing with the issues of these fast-moving buses. They check the buses, they stop to check if the brakes are working. The huge fines used to be paid. This used to be, I used to see that when I was a young boy here in Wasingishu. I went to primary school here in Wasingishu. I had family there, so we lived there for a while. And coming down to Nakuru, you know, all the way to Nairobi, the assistant commissioner of police, if you do remember him, used to drive up and down that highway to make sure nobody drove fast, and everybody used to be scared of that police commissioner. I remember his name. He ran after Moi when Moi came to power. Debal, the whole point of putting a camera in a car is useless. It's just useless. I'll tell you why it's useless.
Yeah, I wanted to ask that. What is the
It's
rhyme or
bizarre,
reason?
but I don't get it.
That is not really preventative.
It's not going to prevent anything.
I'm saying it's not really a preventative measure. It is
It's
actually
not.
checking afterwards.
It's a check on afterwards to see why the accident happened.
Yeah, and if at all you retrieve the camera,
Exactly,
that
even
is-
if you could retrieve it, because it's going to get crashed in the crash.
Indeed, yeah.
So, Debal, you know, this is there's harebrained ideas from the government, Debal, and I'm not just criticizing the government, Debal. I always